Breaking! Westminster has just been rocked by one of the most devastating leaks in modern British politics. A confidential Treasury memo written under the supervision of Chancellor Rachel Reeves herself has been exposed to the public. Within minutes, social media exploded. Parliament descended into chaos. And what began as a routine afternoon sitting has turned into a full-scale political emergency. The leak was small at first, just a few lines from a shadowy insider post. But what it contained was dynamite. It revealed that Reeves allegedly authorised a back-channel communication with several corporate donors, promising preferential policy reviews in exchange for campaign funding. The phrase itself, policy flexibility in the national interest, has already become a symbol of betrayal. Opposition MPs shouted across the chamber. Reporters flooded the lobby. Keir Starmer, blindsided in the middle of a live briefing, was seen storming out with aides, his face pale with disbelief. By evening, the pressure had multiplied. The memo circulated through every newsroom in London, each outlet claiming exclusive details. Sources inside the Treasury say Reeves broke down behind closed doors, insisting the document was taken out of context. But insiders whispered that this was no innocent misunderstanding. It was evidence of a growing fracture inside Starmer's government. Those loyal to Reeves claimed she was being framed by internal rivals jealous of her influence. Those loyal to Starmer said she had crossed an unforgivable line. Outside Westminster, the reaction was explosive. Protesters gathered outside Downing Street, holding signs that read, "Not my Treasury," and "Accountability now." The public anger was immediate, raw and personal. People felt deceived. The woman once hailed as the most competent chancellor in a generation was now being branded the architect of a quiet betrayal. Talk shows ran hour-long specials. Commentators called it the Reeves revelation. And in the heart of all this, Starmer's silence grew louder. For 2 days, he refused to defend or condemn her. Cabinet members were split. Some demanded an inquiry, others wanted her resignation. The Labour Party, still celebrating its fragile dominance, suddenly looked fractured and confused. Starmer, a man obsessed with control, had lost it in a single afternoon. Rumours swirled that he had shouted at Reeves during an emergency meeting, accusing her of handing the Conservatives a loaded gun. Witnesses described the scene as icy, furious, almost cinematic. Reeves, trembling but defiant, denied the allegations and warned that if I fall, others fall with me. Her words sent shockwaves through the corridors of power. What did she mean by others? Was there a deeper conspiracy, an entire network of influence trading inside the new government? Within hours, the Treasury Security Office began locking down communications. Staff phones were seized, internal emails frozen. A government source told the BBC that the leak had exposed not just a scandal, but a civil war within Labour's highest ranks. Reeves's allies insisted she was being sacrificed to protect Starmer's image before the upcoming budget vote. Her enemies whispered that the Chancellor's ambition had finally overreached. The British press smelled blood. Columnists compared the crisis to Watergate on the Thames. Headlines screamed betrayal. Parliament, already tense over economic instability, turned into a theatre of moral collapse. And behind every speech, every denial, one question burned like fire through the nation. Had Rachel Reeves sold her soul for power, or was she the victim of a political trap set from within? As night fell over Westminster, police were seen entering Treasury offices under orders to secure digital evidence. The Prime Minister's convoy left quietly from the back of Downing Street. No statements, no smiles, only a nation wondering how deep the deception goes. And yet, just before midnight, a new message appeared on an anonymous channel claiming to have more documents implicating not only Reeves, but 3 senior advisors connected directly to Starmer's office. If those files are real, they could destroy not just a career, but an entire government. But who leaked them? Was it a rival inside the Labour Party or someone much higher, determined to bring Starmer down from the inside out? Westminster looked less like the seat of government and more like the scene of a political crime. The Treasury was in lockdown. Journalists camped outside, cameras fixed on the heavy black doors, waiting for any flicker of movement. Inside, aides whispered of panic meetings stretching into the early hours. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, who once spoke of economic dignity, now stood accused of moral bankruptcy. Every call, every document, every whisper was being examined under forensic light. The leaked memo wasn't the end, it was the beginning. A second document surfaced overnight, this time signed by a senior advisor in Starmer's inner circle. It appeared to confirm that Labour strategists had discussed leveraging corporate goodwill to stabilise the post-Brexit economy. But the phrasing was damning. It suggested knowledge, even consent, at the highest level. For the first time, Starmer's own integrity was in question. His promise of a clean Labour government sounded hollow, almost mocking, and the press didn't hesitate to remind the public of his words, "No more backroom politics." Now that slogan had become a punchline. By 8 a.m, Starmer emerged, stiff-faced and unconvincing. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "We will get to the truth," he said, "and we will act decisively." But reporters saw the cracks. The trembling jaw, the delay before every answer, the flicker of anger behind his restraint. Political analysts called it the beginning of Starmer's unravelling. His critics within the party, silent for months, began circling like vultures. Angela Rayner was spotted entering the Commons early, refusing to make eye contact with reporters. Her silence was louder than any statement. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves refused to resign. In a quiet but defiant appearance, she declared, "I have nothing to hide." Her words echoed across every channel. Brave to some, reckless to others, but the damage was already done. In Parliament, Conservative MPs demanded her suspension. The Speaker called for an emergency ethics session. Starmer's government looked paralysed, unable to defend or condemn its own Chancellor. Behind closed doors, the tension turned venomous. Sources described a meltdown inside Labour HQ. Shouting, slammed doors, even threats of exposure between factions. One insider claimed Reeves told Starmer directly, "If you think I'll go down alone, you're mistaken." It was a statement that chilled the room, because deep inside number 10, everyone knew she wasn't bluffing. Reeves had been part of every major policy conversation for months. If she turned against the leadership, she could take the entire cabinet with her. And then came the leak within the leak. A voice recording, allegedly from a Labour staff meeting, posted anonymously on an encrypted forum. In it, a woman sounding remarkably like Reeves could be heard saying, "We can't win on honesty alone." Politics doesn't reward purity. The clip spread like wildfire. Overnight, it became a symbol of everything Britain hated about its politicians. Cynicism disguised as pragmatism. Even loyal Labour voters were furious. Public trust began to collapse. Polls shifted dramatically within hours, but Labour's lead dropped by 5 points. The Tories pounced, calling the scandal a betrayal of the taxpayer. Farage went on live television declaring, "The mask is off. Labour is the new establishment." The narrative had escaped Starmer's control, and for a man obsessed with discipline, that loss of order was unbearable. By late afternoon, Starmer summoned Reeves for what insiders called a final reckoning. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. Nobody knows exactly what was said, but witnesses heard shouting through the door. When Reeves finally emerged, her face was pale, her hands trembling. She walked past reporters without a word. Moments later, Labour communications staff issued a brief statement. The Chancellor has been suspended pending further investigation. And just like that, Rachel Reeves was gone. The same woman who once symbolised fiscal strength and moral steadiness had been erased from the political stage in a single sentence. But the silence that followed wasn't victory, it was fear. Because within minutes, another message appeared on the anonymous leak channel. Reeves was only the beginning. The next file exposes the Prime Minister himself. The nation froze. Newsrooms erupted into chaos. Reporters began scrambling for confirmation. Inside number 10, panic spread. Starmer's closest aides rushed to secure their phones, shred documents and purge internal emails. But it was already too late. So screenshots were circulating online showing alleged links between Starmer's office and corporate donors who had funded Labour's campaign just months before the election. This wasn't just about one Chancellor anymore. It was about an entire system built on illusion. A government that preached virtue while hiding corruption behind polished speeches. The British people, tired of scandals and lies, began asking a single dangerous question. If Rachel Reeves fell because of truth, then how long before Keir Starmer follows? As darkness fell again over Westminster, a convoy of black cars entered Downing Street under police escort. Something was happening behind those gates. Something bigger than a resignation, bigger than a scandal. A storm was forming at the very heart of British power. But what secret could be so explosive that even Starmer's own allies would want it buried? And if the next leak truly names the Prime Minister, will this be the night the entire Labour government collapses before our eyes? Night descended on Westminster like a curtain of dread. The air felt heavier, the streets quieter, the lights inside number 10 burning long past midnight. Something had broken in the heart of the government. What began as one leaked memo had mutated into a full-blown constitutional crisis. A test not only of leadership, but of the nation's faith in truth itself. At precisely 12:07 a.m, a new file dropped. Encrypted, anonymous, devastating. It contained private correspondence between Keir Starmer's chief strategist and two foreign investment groups, messages discussing strategic donations, coded language about mutual cooperation, and one chilling line, "The PMM is aware." Within minutes, the document exploded across social media. #StarmerGate trended worldwide. The servers of every major newspaper crashed under the weight of traffic. For the first time in his career, Starmer was not the prosecutor. He was the accused. Inside number 10, panic blurred into silence. Advisors were told to hand over phones. Security swept the halls for bugs. Journalists stationed outside could see staffers leaving in tears. Aides whispered that Starmer had locked himself in his office, pacing, furious, muttering that someone close, very close, had betrayed him. He knew it couldn't have been Reeves. She was already destroyed. That meant the enemy was still inside the house. By dawn, the leaks had grown teeth. A whistleblower came forward, their voice disguised, their message direct. This government runs on deception. What you've seen is only 10%. The broadcast hit national television at 7 a.m. and Britain froze. The idea that the Prime Minister might be complicit in corruption wasn't just scandalous, it was apocalyptic. Starmer had built his reputation on morality, on law, or power, on the promise of a new kind of politics. Now that promise lay in pieces. The opposition demanded his resignation before noon. Crowds filled Parliament Square chanting, "Resign now," and "Where's the truth?" The scene looked less like protest and more like rebellion. Police lined the gates. Reporters shouted questions as Starmer finally appeared, his voice hoarse, his words brittle. "I will not step down," he declared. "I will fight this." But his eyes betrayed the truth. This was a man fighting ghosts. Fighting shadows of loyalty that had already deserted him. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves, isolated and humiliated, watched from her home in silence. Friends said she felt both vindicated and terrified. The woman once accused of betrayal now saw her betrayer crumbling. Some claimed she was preparing a televised statement. Others whispered that she had vanished abroad. Yet one final clue emerged. A message from her private account, posted for less than a minute before deletion. It's not just Labour, it's the system. That phrase detonated across the nation. Commentators began to ask the unthinkable. Was this bigger than Starmer, bigger than Reeves, bigger even than government? Was there an unseen network of donors, bureaucrats and power brokers, modes pulling the strings from the shadows? A quiet alliance that fed on every administration, red or blue, king or commoner. As Parliament reconvened under emergency session, King Charles was briefed personally. Sources said he looked grave, whispering only, "If this is true, it shakes the crown itself." The moral crisis had transcended party lines till it had become a national reckoning. The people no longer cared who was guilty. They wanted to know whether anyone was innocent. By evening, Starmer's convoy left Downing Street under police escort. Some said it was for security, others claimed it was the end. The cameras followed, capturing a Prime Minister framed in flashing lights, a symbol of control slipping into chaos. Outside, thunder rolled over London as if the city itself was mourning something lost. And then one final notification flashed across every phone in the country. Final file incoming, proof of the architect behind it all. The anonymous leaker had returned, promising the last revelation, the truth that would bring the entire House of Power crashing down. So who stands behind the curtain? Was Rachel Reeves merely a pawn or the player of a greater game? And when that final file drops, will it expose a single Prime Minister or the entire illusion of British democracy itself?